Record.
Shabbat Shalom. This Sabbath, I want to quickly, I guess, well, I ain't gonna say it's gonna be quick, but I want to speak on supposed biblical or Israelite modesty. I'm a more so read, but I myself have never really seen a law on modesty. I kind of in Christianity, that was something that I pushed big, that was something I was big on, pushing modesty. So I guess when I was challenged to keep reading or rereading the Bible, I was trying to find a law or something on modesty. Me and Morey Von Parker had a discussion on this, and we really couldn't come to any law or anything. And so it's like, man, and he was kind of challenging me on it. It's like, show me the law. And I could not find the law. I kept looking. I did a major search. And the thing is, what I did find, it challenged my paradigm. Of course, the Brit Hadashah or the New Testament has some things that it says, but I had to even challenge that when looking at the culture. So I want to just read some things and just allow people to have evidence to judge for themselves. Abba, Yah, I thank you for this Shabbat. I thank you for this opportunity just to read your word. May it be edifying to the listener. May those that have constructive criticism come forth. Of course, I'm not one that's accepting of insults or slander, but we can have a discussion. There's nothing wrong with having dialogue, but diatribes and things that um, I guess push a negative or insulting narrative, um, I'm not for that. But Yah, let your will be done and not mine. Let me read this word and may it edify again. Hallelujah. So before I start off reading, I kind of want to show some illustrations or some things that come to mind for me when thinking about us, Israel, as a people. So this right here is an image showing off what's supposed to be the hieroglyphs and the Hebrew slaves or Israelite slaves. And in Egypt, that area, the region is very hot. And so this depiction shows these men mostly exposed or whatever. So they would be evenly tanned, I guess, except for their um, private areas. Modernly, this right here would not be considered modest. And I just wonder, is the modesty standard that most people hold only towards women? But let's go to another picture. You see this was supposed to be of the hieroglyphs. Again, the groin area is covered, but the rest of the body, except for the head, which has hair on it, is exposed. Right here, you do see the women clothed, but the men uncovered. So is it a different level of modesty expected? Or, I'm still wondering, and I haven't seen a law on modesty, showing pictures here. So got a couple of things, just to speak on just briefly. Adam and Eve in the garden were nude. until they realized they weren't. And so they covered themselves with tree or leaves, I gather. But then the Most High covered them with flesh, flesh of an animal. So that's one thing that comes to mind. So let's go to some text and talk on some things. Since we're talking, about Israel, we're gonna have to go before there was Israel, and I want to tap into Abraham and just show two narratives on him, and some interesting things to me come to thought. But again, one could say that I'm adding or whatever, but let's go to read. So going over here to Bereshit or Genesis 12, and it might be a nice lengthy read, but let's go. And Yahuwah said to Abram, go yourself out of your land, from your relatives and from your father's house, to a land which I show you, and I shall make you a great nation. So this is him establishing or setting the precedent that he's going to bring forth Israel out of Abraham's lineage, and Baruch you, and make your name great, and you shall be Baruch. And I shall Baruch those who Baruch you, and curse him who curses you. And in you all the clans of the earth shall be Baruched. So Abram left as Yahuwah had commanded him, and Lot went with him, and Abram was 75 years old. 75 years old. I'm 53. Body is not like it was when I was younger, but this man was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. And Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their possession that they had gathered, and the beings whom they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan. And they came to the land of Canaan. And Abram passed through the land to the place of Shechem, as far as the terebinth tree of Moreh. At the time, the Canaanites were in the land. Now, Sarai is about maybe 10 years younger. We can even estimate, say 20. So if he's 75, just say we're going to just say that she's 55 around there. So around my age. So age would be on her a little bit. A little bit. And Yahuwah appeared to Abram and said, to your seed I give this land. And he built there a slaughter place to Yahuwah who had appeared to him. And from there he moved to the mountain east of Bethel, and he pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And he built there a slaughter place to Yahuwah and called the name of Yahuwah. Called on the name of Yahuwah. And Abram set out, continuing toward the south. And a scarcity of food came to be in the land, and Abram went down to Mizraim. We know Mizraim to be Egypt. This ended up being a land of bondage for the people of Israel. But let me keep going. Abram went down to Mizraim to dwell there, for the scarcity of food was severe in the land. And it came to be, when he was close to entering Mizraim, that he said to Sarai, his wife, see, I know that you are a beautiful woman. Is he just talking about her face? If she was fully clothed, only thing would be available to see is her face. So is he just talking about her face? See, I know that you are a beautiful woman to look at. And it shall be when the Mizraelites see you, that they shall say, This is his wife, and they shall kill me. But let you live. Please say that you are my sister, so that it shall be well with me for your sake, and my life be spared because of you. And it came to be when Abram came into Mizraim that the Mizraelites saw the woman. They saw her. Did they just see her face? This is a question. They saw the woman that she was very beautiful. So again, she's over 50, and according to modern standards, we would think, she was not exposed. They only saw her face is what we would think because of how we look at modesty nowadays. But again, we are talking about a land, desert land. Egypt is a hot land, and we are melanin people. We're able to deal with extreme hot temperatures. But if only her face is exposed, her face would have sun on it and it would darken, and the rest of her body would be a whole different texture, or not texture, it's going to be the same texture, but it'll be a different complexion if she's fully covered. She's fully covered and you don't see any bumps, any of her bodily shape. Again, how is it that these people can determine that she's very beautiful when she's upper in age a little bit, if she's clothing things that will not display her physical shape? Just a question. And Pharaoh's officials saw her and praised her before Pharaoh, and the woman was taken to Pharaoh's house. If she's fully covered and she's getting up in age, what are they praising? I'm like, is her face just that banging? Is she just that beautiful? That, because I'm like, the way that is made modernly is like, oh man, she's fully clothed, so you're not seeing her body. That's the way people take it as. Okay. And he treated Abram well for her sake. And he had sheep and cattle and male donkeys and male and female servants and female donkeys and camels. But Yahuwah plagued Pharaoh in his house with great plagues because Sarai, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, What is this that you have done to me? Why did you not inform me that she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister? And so I was going to take her for my wife. Again, he got all these women around him on a regular basis, young women. This woman is over 50, but he gonna snatch her up. Yeah, and look, here is your wife. Take her and go. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him and sent him away with his wife and all that he had. Okay, we're gonna stay on Abraham, and we're gonna go over here to Bereshit 20. And it's going to be a similar take. This man, huh? It, why not put a veil on her face if that's what everybody's seeing? He can just put a veil on her face. Have her walk with a veil. They wouldn't even be exposed to see her. But I don't think I think it's more than that. I think her dress or how she went about, you could see her shape. But this is just, again, my thinking. Because if it was just a face, just put a veil on it. But her beauty is just exposed, and people can see it. So it's got to be more than just the face to me. But let me keep going. I'm just reading because again, I've never seen a standard when I went just looking that talks about, being fully clothed or whatever for the women. And I showed you a picture of the hieroglyph showing the men working, you know, as slaves, and they were next to naked. Yeah, the women in the pictures had something on, but again, how can someone notice a beauty from a distance? So there you go, Bereshit or Genesis 20. And Abraham set out from there to the land of the south and dwelt between Kadesh and Shur and stayed in Gerar. And Abraham said concerning Sarah his wife, she is my sister. And Abimelech, sovereign of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But Elohim came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, see, you are a dead man because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is a man's wife. However, Abimelech had not come near her, and he said, Yahuwah, would you kill a righteous nation also? Did he not say to me, she is my sister? And she even herself said, he is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and the innocence of my hands, I have done this. And Elohim said to him in a dream, yes, I know that you did this in integrity of your heart, and so I kept you from sinning against me. For this reason, I do not let you touch her. And now return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and let him pray for you, and you live. But if you do not return her, know that you certainly die, you and all that is yours. But it's basically the same scenario. I'm gonna move forward. So this is a nicer, longer read. If I think, let me see. Uh, uh, I'm start. Hmm, you know, I'm gonna read a little bit on this. And we here to take time. We're gonna take a little time. And so here we go. I'm gonna go all the way back up, I guess. So this is Bereshit 24. It says Abraham was old, advanced in years, and Yahuwah had blessed Abraham in every way. And Abraham said to the oldest servant of his house, who ruled over all that he had. This servant was Eliezer. This is the one that he was going to make his heir before he ever had a son. Please put your hand under my thigh, so that I make you swear by Yahuwah, the Elohim of the heavens and the Elohim of the earth, that you do not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I dwell, but go to a land to my relatives and take a wife for my son Yishak. And the servant said to him, what if the woman refuses to follow me to this land? Do I then take your son back to the land from which you came? And Abraham said to him, beware, lest you take my son back there. Yahuwah, Elohim of the heavens, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my relatives, and who spoke to me and swore to me, saying, to your seed I give this land, he sends his messenger before you, and you shall take a wife for my son from there. And if the woman refuses to follow you, then you shall be released from this oath. Only do not take my son back there. Then the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master, and swore to him concerning this matter. And the servant took 10 of his master's camel and left, for all his master's good gifts were in his hand. And he arose and went to Aram Naharaim, to the city of Nahor. And he made his camels kneel down outside the city by a fountain of water at evening time. So it's about to get dark, the time when women go out to draw water. So again, it's getting darker, and this would be the cooler part of the day. At the end of the day, it will be cooler, so they coming out to draw water. The women would be. And he said, Yahuwah Elohim of my master Abraham, please cause her to meet before me this day and show loving commitment to my master Abraham. See, I am standing here by the fountain of water, and the daughters of men of the city are coming out to draw water. Now let it be that the young woman to whom I say, please let down your jar to let me drink. And she says, drink and let me water your camels too. Let her be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Yishak. And let me know by this that you have shown loving commitment to my master. And it came to be, before he had ended speaking, that see, Ribkah, who was born of Bethuel, son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, came out with her jar on her shoulder. Okay. And the young woman was very good looking. Just her face, a maiden, no man having known her. So she hadn't been touched sexually. And she went down to the fountain, filled her jar, and came up. And the servants ran to meet her and said, please, let me drink a little water from your jar. And she said, drink, my master. And she hurried and let her jar down to her hand and gave him a drink. And when she had finished giving him a drink, she said, let me draw water for your camels too, until they have finished drinking. And she hurried and emptied her jar into the trough, ran back to the fountain to draw water, and drew for all his camels. And watching her, the man remained silent in order to know whether Yahuwah had prospered his way or not. So again, he seen her beauty. He seen her youth. He could view her. And it came to be when the camels had finished drinking that the man took a golden nose ring weighing half a shekel and two bracelets for her wrists. He put her on her wrist, so he seen her wrists, weighing 10 shekels of gold, and said, whose daughter are you? Please inform me, is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night? And she said to him, I am the daughter of Bethuel, Milcah's son, whom she bore to Nahor. And she said to him, we have both straw and fodder enough and room to spend the night. And the man bowed down his head and worshipped Yahuwah. And he said, Baruch be Yahuwah, Elohim of my master, Abraham, who has not forsaken his loving commitment and his truth toward my master. As for me, being on the way, Yahuwah led me to the house of my master's brothers. So he was kinsman of Abraham. Then the young woman ran and informed those of her mother's house these matters. And Ribkah had a brother whose name was Laban, and Laban ran out to the man to the fountain. And it came to be when he saw the nose ring and the bracelets on his sister's wrist. If her wrists are covered, how is he seeing the bracelet? He could see the bracelet, so her wrists were exposed. And when he heard the word of his sister Rivka saying, thus the man spoke to me, that he went to the man and saw him standing by the camels at the fountain. And he said, come in, O Baruch of Yahuwah. Why do you stand outside? I myself have prepared the house and place for the camels. So the man came into the house while he unloaded the camels and provided straw and fodder for the camels and water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. Sounds like those feet were exposed, but again, this focuses on modesty, so I had to note that. And set food before him to eat. But he said, let me not eat until I have spoken my word. And he said, speak on. And he said, I am Abraham's servant, and Yahuwah has baruched my master exceedingly, and he has become great. And he has given him flocks and herds, and silver and gold, and male and female servants, and camels and donkeys. And Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master when she was old, and he has given to him all that he has. And my master made me swear, saying, do not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, in whose land I dwell, but go to my father's house and to my relatives, and take a wife for my son. And I said to my master, What if the woman does not follow me? But he said to me, Yahuwah before whom I walk sends his messengers with you, and shall prosper your way. And you shall take a wife for my son from my relatives and from my father's house. Then when you go to my relatives, you are to be released from this oath. And if they do not give her to you, then you are released from my oath. And this day I came to the fountain and said, Yahuwah, Elohim of my master Abraham, please, if you are prospering the way in which I am going, see, I am standing by the fountain of water, and when the young woman comes out to draw water, and I say to her, please give me a little water for your jar to drink, from your jar to drink, and she says to me, drink, and let me draw for your camels too. Let her be the woman whom Yahuwah has appointed for my master's son. I had not yet ended speaking in my heart, then see, Ribkah was coming out with her jar on her shoulder. And she went down to the fountain and drew water, and I said to her, please let me drink. And she hurried and let her jar down from her shoulder and said, drink, and let me water your camels too. So I drank, and she watered the camels too. And I asked her and said, whose daughter are you? And she said, the daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bore to him. Then I put the nose ring on her nose and the bracelets on her wrists. These bracelets, again, are viewable on her wrists. And I bowed my head and worshiped Yahuwah and Baruch Yahuwah, Elohim of my master Abraham, who had led me in the true way to take the daughter of my master's brother for his son. And now, if you are going to show loving commitment and truth to my master, let me know. And if not, let me know, so that I turn to the right or to the left. And Laban answered Bethuel too, and said, the matter comes from Yahuwah. We are not able to speak to you either evil or good. See, Ribkah is before you. Take her and go, and let her be your master's son's wife, as Yahuwah has spoken. And it came to be, when Abraham's servant heard their words, that he bowed himself before the earth, bowed himself towards the earth before Yahuwah. And the servant brought out ornaments of silver and ornaments of gold and garments, and gave them to Ribkah. He also gave costly gifts to her brother and to her mother. And he and the men who were with him ate and drank and spent the night. When they arose in the morning, he said, let me go to my master. But her brother and her mother said, let the young woman stay with us a few days, at least 10, then you go. And he said to them, do not delay me, since Yahuwah has prospered my way. Let me go so that I go to my master. And they said, let us call the young woman and ask her. So they called Ribkah and said to her, are you going with this man? And she said, I shall go. So they let go Ribkah, their sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant and his men. And they baruched Ribkah and said to her, let our sister become the mother of thousands of ten thousands, and let your seed possess the gates of those who hate them. And Ribkah and her young woman arose, and they rode on the camels and followed the man. So the servant took Ribkah and left. And Yitzhak came from the way of Beer Lahai Roy, for he dwelt in the south. And Yitzhak went out to meditate in the field in the evening. And he lifted his eyes and looked and saw camels coming. So it's starting to get dark. And Rivkah lifted her eyes, and when she saw Yitzhak, she dismounted from her camel. Now this is key. This is key. And said, she had said to the servant, who is this man walking in the field to meet us? And the servant said, it is my master. So look, this woman has been hanging with Eliezer coming from her father's house. So she took a veil and covered herself. She took a veil and covered herself. Eleazar had been able to see her. She had been doing her duties in a certain way. And now that she's supposed to come up to this man that is to be her husband, she covers herself. She wasn't covered prior, she covers herself now. So her dress, her regular dress, was what it was. If you want to say covering yourself with a veil is modesty, she had no desire and no inclination to do that until she was seeing the man that would be her husband. So she took a veil and covered herself. And the servant told Yishak all the matters he had done, and Yishak brought her into his mother Sarah's tent, and he took Ribkah, and he took Ribkah, and he took Ribkah, and she became his wife. He laid with her, and he loved her. Thus Yishak was comforted after his mother's death. Hmm. So that right, I'm gonna get back at it. I got some more reading. She put a veil on, not when she met the man at the well, not when she was at the house, but when she was about to meet the man that would be her husband. She had been uncovered, I guess, or you could say, until she seen her eventual covering. Her father was her covering. She didn't have a veil on. She put a veil on when she seen the man that would be her husband. She didn't have it on prior. She didn't have nothing on her wrist, or they were able to see the bracelets were there. So she had a short shirt, short sleeve shirt. The wrists or the bracelets were exposed. So was her arms uncovered to the sun? If she was fully covered, how you just let me continue. Now, just questions, just questions. All right. So I'm gonna go over here to Bereshit or Genesis 29. Got some reading to do here. I might try to break this one down a little bit or cuts from it, but I do want to hit something particular in here. So it says, and Yaqub moved on and came to the land of the people of the east. So Yaqub being the son of Yishak, the brother of Esau, and he looked and saw a well in the field and saw three flocks of sheep lying by it. For out of the well, that well, they watered the flocks, and a large stone was on the well's mouth. So he's back in the same land that Ribkah came from, his mother. Ribkah is his mother. And all the flocks would be gathered there. Then they would roll the stone from the well's mouth and water the sheep, and put the stone back in his place on the well's mouth. And Yaqub said to them, my brothers, where are you from? And they said, we are from Haran. And he said to them, do you know Laban, son of Nahor? This would be his uncle, his mother's brother. And they said, we know him. So he said to them, is he well? And they said, well, and see, his daughter Rahel is coming with the sheep. Remember, his mother was with the sheep when the servant found her. And he said, see, it is still high day, not the time of the livestock, to be gathered together. So it's still hot out there. Water the sheep and go and feed them. But they said, we are not allowed until all the flocks are gathered together and they have rolled the stone from the well's mouth. Then we shall water the sheep. While he was still speaking with them, Rahel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. And it came to be when Jacob saw Rahel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the whale's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. And Jacob kissed Rahel. Man, he seen her. He like, man, I gotta kiss her. And lifted up his voice and wept. Something about her just had him enamored. And when Jacob told Rahel that he was her father's relative and that he was Rivka's son, she ran and told her father. And it came to be when Laban heard the report about Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran to meet him. So maybe he just seen her face. Maybe that's it. And embraced him and kissed him. So, it said Laban heard the report about Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. And he told Laban all these matters. And Laban said to him, you are indeed my bone and my flesh. And he stayed with him for a new moon, for a month. And Laban said to Jacob, because you are my relative, should you therefore serve me for naught? Let me know what should be your wages. What should your wages be? Excuse me. And Laban had two daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rahel. I've read other texts that said that they were twins, and Leah was the oldest of it. And it says, and Leah's eyes were weak. So you can see her face that her eyes were weak. But Rahel was beautiful of form and beautiful of appearance. That stands out to me. Beautiful of form and beautiful of appearance. Again, beautiful of form and beautiful of appearance. If she's modestly dressed as we suppose modernly, how in the world can somebody know how her form is and that it's beautiful? I get seeing her face, you could say, oh, because the sister had weak eyes. And these are supposed to be twins, but again, people don't accept books that's not from these 66. So I'm gonna leave that alone. But it says Leah's eyes were weak. So that's noticeable. That's her face. She had a butter face. Everything probably would look good, but her face. But Rahel was beautiful of form and not or and beautiful of appearance. So her face was beautiful, but it says her form was beautiful. And if she's fully dressed, modest as we, expect, or as many people put the expectation today, if she had a muumuu on, or loose clothing or whatever, how would you know what her form is and that is beautiful? Either she's wearing something that's form fitting or her flesh is exposed. That's my thought. Let me keep moving. I'm gonna move to the next. All right. Gonna go over here to Bereshit, Genesis 38. And at that time it came to be that Yehuda, we were taught or introduced to this person as Judah, the son of Israel, son of Jacob, but his name is Yehuda. He left his brothers and turned aside to a man, an Adulamite, whose name was Hira. And Yehuda saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua, and he took her and went into her. Hmm. He saw a woman, took her, went into her. So she conceived and bore a son, and he called his name And she conceived again and bore a son, and she called his name Onan. And she conceived yet again and bore a son, and called his name Shelah. And he was at Kezib when she bore him. So 3 sons. And Yahudah took a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Yahudah's firstborn, was evil in the eyes of Yahudah, and Yahudah took his life. And Yahudah said to Onan, go in to your brother's wife and marry her, and raise up an heir to your brother. Now, again, this is interesting because this is before the giving of the law. And there is a law that says that if a brother dies before having an heir, that the brother should marry this woman and provide an heir. And so this is interesting that many people say the law was not given until Moses came about, but this is way before Moses, and this is describing an exact law. Don't again, I'm not seeing any laws. I haven't seen any laws in the Tanakh or Torah talking about modesty. Somebody got one, please share it. Put it in the comments. Help. Hey, if you know me, contact me. Share that with me. I'm talking about the Tanakh or the Old Testament or the Torah, the 5 books that people call the Torah. If you see anything in there that speaks on modesty, please hit me up. And it says, and Yahudah said to Onan, go into your brother's wife and marry her, and raise up an heir to your brother. Kinsman redeemer law. I can show you the law, but I'm not going. That's not the focus. So let me stay on task. And Onan knew that the offspring would not be his; it would be his brother's. And it came to be when he went into his brother's wife that he spilled on the ground. So he ejaculated onto the ground, lest he should give an offspring to his brother. He didn't want to redeem his brother. He didn't want to give an heir to his brother. So he was basically ignoring the law, the Torah. People act like the law was not in place before Moses came into place. And, but again, Abraham was somebody that was right lined up with Yah. And you think Yah didn't share his laws, his instructions with Abraham? But again, let me keep going. But what he did displeased Yahuwah, so he took his life too. Then Yahudah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, remain a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah is grown. Because again, this woman was supposed to, one of the things that people don't get about this type of polygyny, the first son would have been the heir, right? She was married to the first son. So a lot of the wealth of Yahudah was given to that first son. So this woman, Mary, would be sharing in that wealth. Her husband died, it's with her. So that's why the next son, to keep the wealth of that family with that family, the next son would marry her. And then provide a son so that that son can have that wealth and it can stay in the patriarchy of that father. His grandson would take on that wealth. It's about wealth staying with the family. It ain't about lust, none of that. the resources of that family not being spread and given to some other family because all of that wealth is with this woman. If she leaves and marry another man of another family, the resources of that home are no longer with that family. They go with her, and now they go to the new family that she's with. If she stays with someone in his family, it never leaves, that wealth never leaves that household. But that's again a rabbit's trail. Let me keep going. Then Yahudah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, remain a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah is grown. For he said, lest he also die as his brothers did. And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house. And after a long time, the daughter of Shua, Yahudah's wife, died. And Yahudah was comforted and went up to his sheep shearers at Timnah, and he and his friend Hira, the Adulamite, and it was reported to Tamar, saying, see, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep. And she took off her widow's garment, so she took off the clothes that she had, and covered herself with a veil and wrapped herself. So she's covered. You can't see her face, can't see her body. She's covered. And sat at the entrance of Enoyim, which was on the way to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given to him as a wife. So she took off her widow's garment and covered herself with a veil. Remember, Rivka covered herself with a veil, but covered that face. But it also says she wrapped herself. So she covered up everything. And Yahudah saw her. He couldn't recognize that it was Tamar because, again, she had a veil on and she was fully covered, but and reckoned her for a whore. So it wasn't her nakedness that made her look like a whore. It was her coveredness and her veil over her face that made her look like a whore. So she was what we would call modernly modest. She was covered up, but yet she was reckoned for a whore, for she had covered her face. And he turned aside to her. By the way, not, I just wanted to take a little break. She covered her face and was seen as a whore. Rivka wasn't, she covered her face. She wasn't seen as a whore. So was it the rest of her body being covered? But mm, we live in this modern culture and we let the influences of this modern culture have so much of a say that we ignore that these people were in a hot land. And to cover up, if you have one thing exposed, it's getting darker and everything else is covered. You're gonna not tan evenly. We can accept the sun rays. This woman was completely covered and was viewed as a whore. Sound like to me like she was doing something that's contrary to what the norm was, being fully covered and having her face covered. That's why she was viewed as a whore, because this she was standing out. But and he turned aside to her by the way and said, please let me come into you. For he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. She was covered. He couldn't see and couldn't tell that was his daughter-in-law. Didn't see her flesh. And she said, what do you give me to come into me? She talking to him. He didn't recognize the voice, but he couldn't see her. He just knew that she stood out. She was a whore. According to him, he thought she was a whore. But remember, she's still fully covered, face, a veil over her face. So modern modesty didn't fit this at all. And he said, let me send you a young goat from the flock. And she said, Do you give me a pledge until you send it? So he said, what pledge should I give you? And she said, your seal and your cord and your staff that is in your hand. And he gave them to her and went into her, and she conceived by him. So he went into her. He had sex with her. This fully dressed, clothed woman. Of course, again, he ain't having sex with her fully dressed, but this is a place in time. They didn't have no street lights and all these different things. They operated by flame. They didn't have a switch in electricity like that, or we don't believe they did. When you're dealing with somebody, it's dark, dark. You can't see them. When you can see them, he could see that she was fully clothed. But when you getting it on, whatever, you in a dark, dark room. He didn't know who she was. He laid with her and bet, got her pregnant. She conceived by him. And she arose and went away and removed her veil and put on the garments of her widowhood. So she took all of that extra stuff off when she left there. And now she put back on her widowhood hood clothes. So she could be seen now. When she was all covered up, she couldn't be seen. But she put her widowhood garments on so she can be seen. And Yahudah sent the young goat by the hand of his friend, the Adulamite, to receive his pledge from the woman's hand, but he did not find her. And he asked the men of the place, saying, where is the cult prostitute who was beside the way of Enoim? And they said, there was no cult prostitute in this place. She stood out that day. But again, they saying there was no cult prostitute in place. And he returned to Yahudah and said, I have not found her. And the men of the place also said, there was no cult prostitute in this place. He didn't recognize this woman, didn't know who she was. Yet this was his daughter-in-law. And Yahudah said, let her take them for herself, lest we become despised. For I sent this young goat, and you have not found her. And it came to be about 3 new moons or 3 months after that, Yahudah was informed, saying, Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has whored, and see, she has conceived by whoring. So it's only 3 months. So how do they know that she's conceiving or pregnant? They can see it. They can see it. Hey, this when she was fully clothed, that man couldn't see who she was, but now they can see who she is and they can see that she's pregnant. And Yahudah said, bring her out and let her be burned. And when she brought out, when she was brought out, obviously pregnant, he could see it. He couldn't tell who she was when he laid with her, but now he could see his daughter-in-law is pregnant. She sent to her father-in-law saying, by the man to whom these belong, I am pregnant. And she said, please examine whose these are, the seal and the cord and the staff. And Yahudah examined and said, she has been more righteous than I, because I did not give to her Shelah my son, and he never knew her again. He never had sex with her again. But when he met up with her, she was fully covered, veiled up. But yet he called her a whore, recognized her as a whore. The people, they didn't know nothing about it. Ain't no cult prostitute here. So he didn't know her from Adam when he seen her covered up. So being fully covered, modest by modern standards, she was called a whore. These women I spoke of before seem to be able to be seen. Ain't nobody calling them whore. They calling them beautiful. Beautiful shape. How you see somebody's shape? Unless their clothes are form fitting, unless they are close to naked. Hmm. Let me keep going. Let me see. I'm gonna deal with some of the male modesty too. And the funny thing about you know, hmm, the funny thing about it, I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep going. Never mind. I was finna say something, but I'm gonna keep going. Keep going. All right. Dealing with Dawid here. Shemuel el Bet, 2 Samuel 6. Now Dawid again gathered all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. And Dawid rose up and went with all the people who were with him from Baal Yahuda to bring up there the ark of Elohim, that is called by the name Yahuwah of hosts, who dwells between the cherubim. And they placed the ark of Elohim on a new wagon, and brought it from the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill. And Uzzah and Ahio, sons of Abinadab, were leading the new wagon. And they brought it from the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill, with the ark of Elohim, and Ahio was walking before the ark. And Dawid, and all the house of Israel were dancing before Yahuwah with all the instrument of fir and wood and lyres and with harps and with tamarines and with sistrums and with cymbals. And when they came to the threshing floor of Nakan, Uzzah reached out toward the ark of Elohim and took hold of it, for the oxen stumbled. And the wrath of Yahuwah burnt against Uzzah, and Elohim struck him there for the fault, and he died there by by the ark of Elohim. Now, I'm pointing out the dancing, but let's keep going. And Dawid was displeased because Yahuwah had broken out against Uzzah, and he called the name of the place Peretz Uzzah until this day. And Dawid was afraid of Yahuwah on that day and said, how shall the ark of Yahuwah come to me? And Dawid would not move the ark of Yahuwah with him into the city of Dawid, but Dawid turned it aside to the house of Obed Edom, the Gittite, and the ark of Yahuwah remained in the house of Obed Edom, the Gittite, 3 new moons or 3 months. And Yahuwah baruched Obed Edom and all his house. And it was reported to sovereign Dawid, saying, Yahuwah has baruched the house of Obed Edom and all that he has, because the ark of Elohim. Dawid then went and brought up the ark of Elohim from the house of Obed Edom to the city of Dawid with rejoicing. And it came to be, when those bearing the ark of Yahuwah had gone 6 steps, that he slaughtered bulls and fatted sheep. And Dawid danced before Yahuwah with all his might. And Dawid was wearing a linen shoulder garment. Thus Dawid and all the house of Yisrael brought up the ark of Yahuwah with shouting and with the voice of the shofar, with a voice of a shofar. So they were playing a horn. They called it the voice of a shofar anyway. And it came to be, when the ark of Yahuwah came into the city of Dawid, that Michal, daughter of Shaul, looked through the window and saw sovereign Dawid leaping and dancing before Yahuwah, and she despised him in her heart. So they brought the ark of Yahuwah in and set it in its place in the midst of the tent that Dawid had pitched for it. And Dawid brought ascending offerings before Yahuwah and peace offerings. And when Dawid had finished bringing ascending offerings and peace offerings, he baruched the people in the name of Yahuwah of hosts. And he apportioned to all the people, to all the crowd of Israel, from man even woman, to each one a loaf of bread and a measure of cake of raisins. And all the people left, each one to his house. And Dawid returned to Baruch his household. And Michal, the daughter of Shaul, came out to meet Dawid and said, how esteemed was the sovereign of Israel today, uncovering himself today in the eyes of the female servants of his servants, as one of the foolish ones shamelessly uncovers himself. Now remember, it said he had some linen ephod on, so was he naked? Many have said that he was naked. He was dancing nakedly. She viewed him as being immodest, but he was esteeming Yahuwah. I'm just pointing this out, not it's just the whole fact that some people can view something to be immodest and it not be so. Yah has no problem with it. Just point that out. Let me move. All right. Shir Har Shirim, or a Song of Songs 1. I'm gonna make this brief too, because I'm basically wrapping it up, because I'm still looking for somewhere in the Torah, somewhere in the Tanakh that speaks against modesty, but I just want to read this too. Let me get going. The Song of Songs, which is Shalomos, or as this Solomon. Let his kiss, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. For your carnal love are better than wine. Carnal love, sex. For fragrance, for your oils are good. Your name is oil poured forth. Therefore, the young woman love you. Young women, excuse me, love you. This is the woman, seems like the woman talking to him. Draw me, we run after you. The sovereign has brought me into his inner rooms. We exalt and rejoice in you. We praise your carnal love more than wine, enjoying his sex. Rightly, they do love you. Now, this is interesting. I am dark, but lovely. O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Shalamu. Do not look upon me because I am dark, because the sun has tanned me. And that's where I want to stand at right there. If she was always covered up, her face would be darker, but the rest of it wouldn't be tanned. Only her hands, those things, her feet, things that are exposed. But it doesn't sound like she was unevenly tanned. Do not look upon me because I am dark, her whole body, because the sun has tanned me. My mother's sons were displeased with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards. My own vineyard I have not kept. Again, I'm reaching. I'm reaching here. But the sun has tanned me. I'm gonna take a little liberty here and say, going back to Sarah, Pharaoh and Abimelech were able to see her beauty because they saw not just her face, they saw her form, her figure. What did Yaqub see? He saw a beautiful face. Leah's face was busted, her eyes. But it didn't say just, he said a beautiful form and a beautiful appearance. What is one's form? If your clothes are like a muumuu or loosely, how are you seeing a form? If modesty means that you cannot show off your form, which Hebraic sisters, Israelite sisters are very shapely. One of the things that gets me is that when you look at the what's called the homeland. Those women, a lot of times, their flesh is exposed a lot. You can see cleavage, you can see all of that. See legs, you can see all of that. But the problem that comes to play is that it's usually the outsiders that are lusting, that have a serious problem with what they see. But those that live among those women, they see it all the time. You don't see them acting carnally and lustfully over that. So, what is immodest about it? If the people of that land have no problem with it, why do we? You know, I don't know. Modesty is something that was pushed on me a lot. You know, a lot of the stuff. Women can't wear pants. And then when you start doing your historical look at Israel and in Bible times, you find out that they all wore robes or something similar or akin to a dress. So much so that the law talks about them having undergarments or not standing above others because your junk would be exposed. If you had pants on, how you standing above somebody, how your junk gonna be exposed if you got pants on? But people don't want to deal with that. This thing, modesty, what is that about? We see a lot of the clothing nowadays and compare it and make it seem like it's so bad. But then when we go back to our own timeline of our youth and we see they were wearing the same type of stuff. Again, I'm uncomfortable with it. I'm like, hey, I be at work and I see young men with their pants sagging. I don't want to see their drawers. See young ladies with their midsection exposed. I don't want to see that. These are young folks. And I'm like, cover that up. But they comfortable with it. My ideal of modesty is different than theirs. Me being a husband, I want my gifts wrapped up. I don't want everybody to see it. I want to be the one that sees and unwraps. Not every man feels that way. Some men are comfortable with their women's shape and everything being displayed. Honestly, I used to have a problem with all that, but again, let that man rule his own household. It's not my thing, not my place. May Yah, deal with him if he's in the error, but that's between him and Yah. That's not my place. Of course, if it's my son or my daughter, I can speak to my daughter's husband if, that be the case. She had, my three daughters get married. My son, I can speak to him about how his house, but other than that, unless somebody gives me space to speak on stuff like that or they ask me, I'm out of order. Let another man run his house how he decides to run it, especially if it's not breaking the law. And again, I've asked, show me the law. Show me something in the Torah, something in the Tanakh. Don't bring me something from the Brit Hadashah. Because we already know a lot of the stuff in the Brit Hadashah people already get out of place or they miscomprehend. I'm like the man Shual that most people bring up. He telling people about marriage and he ain't married himself. He don't even have a desire to marry. How you gonna talk about marriage and be such of authority on it? And he don't even he has no connection to marriage himself. If everybody was like you all, not having a desire to marriage, where would the population go? If nobody decided to get married, nobody had a desire for physical affection. Shual was speaking for himself. Shaul was speaking for himself. That's not a law for everybody. A lot of this stuff with modesty and stuff like that, let a man govern his own home. I wish we could, look back in time or whatever, but I believe our people in the land have been consistent. They were not fully clothed or covered up like that. And as we see with Tamar, when she was fully clothed like that, she was viewed as a harlot. When she was in her widow clothes or whatever, she could be viewed and it was being able to be seen that she was pregnant. She could have been in those same covered up clothes and nobody would have even known until she dropped that baby that she was pregnant. But 3 months passed and in her regular widow's clothes, they could tell she was pregnant. After 3 months, they can see her shape after 3 months when she was in her regular clothes. But when she had her clothes that it was viewed as whore clothes, had no idea who she was. What she He ain't had no idea. He just laid with her just that one time. Laid with her and put a baby in it. Hey, he might well say he put a ring on it too because he gave her his signet. But oh boy, I swear one of the things that gets me is that people be making new laws or binding up other folks over their own personal convictions, and that's a problem. If it's your personal conviction, then you need to honor that. You can't impose that on somebody, especially if they're not under your covering, your headship. You can't keep making laws to put on people and calling them unrighteous and calling them out of line. You speaking on Yah's servant. You don't have and that is in there. That's in the Torah. But no, I don't know. I just want to just look at this and read it, and so I'm gonna get off of here. Abba Yah, thank you for this Shabbat. Thank you for this opportunity to talk. May those that have constructive criticism, questions, bring them forth. Again, I ain't accepting no insults. I will block them real quick if they want to come with the name calling and stuff like that. They can, say they disagree with me. I'm fine with that. I don't require anyone to agree with me. But, this name calling and talking stuff, nah, because they would never say that stuff to my face, y'all. But anyway, let me get myself under control and let me get this right. Yah, Abba Yah, thank you for the Shabbat. I thank you for this opportunity to speak and that you be magnified in all that I do. Shankwa Yah, Abba, thank you, Abba. Thank you, Abba, for allowing me to have this one vision and bring forth a ministry in my household to love on my family and love on those that are willing to hear from me. Not as a leader, because you are the leader, but as a peer to men and women. Shabbat Shalom. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.